Yeah, I think we'll get started. I think
Okay.
this is most of the people who confirmed they'd be here on time. We might have a couple
Awesome.
people join us. Um, but yeah. So yeah, I'll just introduce Taylor to all you guys. So I took a program recently called the Personal Trainer Business Accelerator, and Taylor worked alongside another coach called Matt with me on that. And Taylor is a mindset and personal development coach. So we would have a call every 2 weeks and talking about anything that we struggled with, whether it be mindset or energy or scheduling. And Taylor's just a real expert on those topics. And I got so much value from Taylor. Um, and I thought he could offer you guys a lot of value as well in my program. So that's why I invited him onto the Athlete Mobility Blueprint. So yeah, take it away, Taylor.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Awesome to be here, guys. Grateful to spend the night with you. Thanks for hopping on. So I kind of have a layout, I talked to David about some things we're going to cover. Hopefully that'll help you guys provide value. But that being said, also, sometimes there's a plan and sometimes we'll go against the plan. Ultimately, I am here to help support you guys. I want to help provide you value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw 3 questions in the chat. Okay. So I would love for you guys to answer these in the chat, and then I'll kind of just get started to give you a little bit more background on me. But this is just going to give me an opportunity to get to know you guys a little bit better. Okay. So I just dropped those in there, but basically I want to know, what was your main goal for taking this course? What's been going well so far? And then what could be going better? Or maybe what are you struggling with? So you can kind of think about that. And then, once you have those answers, you can throw them in the chat. But again, a little more background on me, as David mentioned, I go by life coach, personal development coach, mindset coach, leadership coach, and a number of hats, but my background is actually in fitness. So I've been in the fitness industry for the past 10 years, college training and conditioning, CrossFit, personal training, kind of everything. And from there, it was just a natural evolution segue into more of mindset, life coaching, personal development. And I found that there was like such a connection between the two. And a lot of the things that I want to talk about tonight to help you guys with. Obviously, you're here for improving your health or fitness, or maybe you have specific goals within sport. And a big part of that is personal development, right? Scheduling, habits, being consistent. So that's kind of how I got into what I'm doing now. And so I know talking to David, he gave me a little bit of a heads up of what you guys are doing, maybe some struggles that you're having. So we're just gonna run through some basic things that I teach that I think will really help you guys. So again, go ahead and drop those answers in the chat whenever you get a chance. Ultimately, though, I want to talk about consistency. And so I would say, one of the biggest things I see when working with people, anytime we want to start a program or we're working on bettering ourselves, is it really starts with mindset, right? So the first thing I want to talk about, and David may have talked about this a little bit with you guys, but I'll just kind of run through it, is adopting the growth mindset, right? So generally speaking, there's 2 mindsets, the growth and then the fixed mindset. So the growth mindset is where we look at every opportunity in life as an opportunity to grow or get better. And then the fixed mindset is where we think we were born a certain way or with certain traits. So like the example I always like to give is, maybe you are in school and you take a math test and you study hard and you get a C, or you don't pass. Let's just say that you don't pass. And if you have the growth mindset, you're like, I can't believe this happened. I'm never going to let this happen again. I'm going to stay after class. I'm going to ask more questions. I'm going to get tutoring. I'm going to talk to the teacher. And then someone with a fixed mindset, they get the same grade. And instead they just say, oh, I'm not a smart person, or I'm just not good at taking tests. Right. And ultimately, we all are born with certain gifts, right? Whether it's athletic ability or intellectually. But the difference is we can all make progress, right? You guys can't tell my height, but I'm 5'7", not very tall. So the odds of making it in the NBA were definitely against me. However, I could improve at the sport of basketball if I wanted to, right? And so that would be adopting the growth mindset. Okay. So that's kind of how I want to start off is I want to challenge you guys, if you haven't already, adopt that growth mindset. And that's going to be something that's going to fluctuate over time. We're going to have periods where maybe we drop into that fixed mindset, but we want to be able to pull ourselves out of it and stick with that growth mindset. Okay. And the reason that's important, because when we talk about consistency, most people have this all or nothing approach, right? And especially with like nutrition or fitness, it's, we decide we're going to start a diet or we're going to start a workout program. And all of a sudden we're like, I got to work out 5 days a week, 2 hours a day. Or if it's nutrition, people are like, I'm not going to eat any carbs. I'm not going to eat out, like all of that. And then all of a sudden they have one bad meal, right? Maybe we have dessert or we order a pizza or whatever it is. It's a stressful day. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, I just ruined all my progress. So one meal turns into a day, turns into a week, turns into a month. And then we got to start over. So the biggest thing I want to talk about when it comes to consistency, because I'm seeing a lot of you guys writing consistency in the chat, is it's about starting small. Okay. In fact, it's about starting so small that it seems too easy, right? And that's where we're going to talk about tiny habits. And then I'm going to read through it. Understanding my body to improve its movement, better ability, more consistency, everything in your routine and being consistent. Awesome. Okay. Seems like we're on the same page. So this is what we're going to cover. So what I want to introduce you guys is something that I call tiny habits. Okay. It's actually not something I came up with. I believe the author is BJ Fogg. There's an author. He wrote a book on tiny habits. And essentially I'm going to teach you guys a framework. Okay. Which you guys can implement in David's course. You can implement in the mobility tools, but you can also implement in all aspects of your life. Right. It could be at work. It could be, with chores around the house, and that sort of thing. But basically, when it comes to tiny habits, there's going to be three things. There's going to be an anchor point, there's going to be a behavior, and then there's going to be a celebration. Okay. So, if you're thinking about creating a new habit, most of the time what happens is people start too big. Okay. So I'll use kind of a couple of examples here. I've had a lot of clients come to me and they're like, oh, Taylor, I wish I could, I really want to read more and I want to spend less time on my phone. I scroll social media too much. Right. And so I kind of asked them, hey, okay, how do you want to implement this? And they're like, well, I could read at night for 30 minutes a night. Right. And so the way that Tiny Habits works is we're going to find something that you already do, right? Something that's already a part of your life, an old habit, and that's going to be the anchor point, right? So for example, let's say that somebody watches TV every night before they go to bed. So that could be the anchor point. And then the second step is the behavior. What do they want to add? Reading more. Okay. So if we want to read more, now, every time you go to watch TV, you're going to read before you turn on the TV, right? Because it's already a habit. It's already something you do. So that's easy to implement. And then the behavior. So this is where we want to start really, really small, because most people tell me, they're like, I'll read for 30 minutes or I'll read a chapter. And I say, no, that's too big. And they're like, okay, how about, 5 pages? And I'm like, no, that's too big. 1 page. No, that's too big. Literally, I just tell them to read 1 sentence. That is the tiny habit. Okay. And the reason is, if you sit down, you turn your lamp on, you open your book and you read 1 sentence, the odds are you'll read 2. Maybe you read a paragraph, maybe you read a page, but ultimately it's about consistency and not biting off more than we can chew. Because what's more important is, for the next 2 weeks, 14 days, I want that person to read every single day. Right. And if they open their book and sit down, they've had a long day and they're like, I just don't want to read. They can read that one sentence, close their book, watch TV. They don't have to feel guilty, right? And so that's one example. So when it comes to you guys, right? Obviously, I know, David has a plan for you guys. Like if you follow everything he does, you're going to see results. However, if you guys are struggling, right? Consistency, I know he would agree with me, is going to be more important than not doing anything, right? So another example I give is people who want to work out, right? So they get home from work. The first thing they do is they lay on the couch. And so I say, okay, cool. Before you lay on the couch, you're going to change into your workout clothes. Put your tennis shoes on. And that's the tiny habit. So the anchor point is getting home. Instead of sitting on the couch, they're going to change clothes. And then the new habit is literally just putting on their workout clothes. Because if they put their workout clothes on, the odds are they'll go for walk 2 blocks. Maybe they'll turn into a jog. But again, if they change their clothes and they get back into the room and they're like, I really don't want to work out. Okay, cool. You can sit on the couch, because it's more about behavior than it is about setting an expectation of like, I got to go for 30 minutes. I got to go for an hour, etc. Okay. So I'll kind of pause there. Anyone, I know David had mentioned some of you guys may not be able to chat, but either you guys can pop on the video or throw in the chat. I'm curious if there's anything specific like that you're struggling with as far as implementing or consistency with these habits. Is it finding time in your schedule? Is it getting completed with all of it? Are you lacking motivation? Throw in anything there, just so I can help you a little bit more specifically.
Well, I think,
and David, if you have anything to add as well.
Well, I think you were probably going to talk about it because you mentioned like the anchor behavior, but then the celebration aspect as well.
Yeah. So while you guys are kind of thinking and typing, so the celebration, right? Let's celebrate our wins. David and I have talked a lot about this, but every time you do something, right, that's positive, let's celebrate that. Okay. And again, I'm going to talk in generality. So this is very specific to mobility. But it also could be everyday life, right? So every time that, let's say you have, hypothetically, you've got a 10-minute mobility session in the morning. Every time you do that, let's celebrate it, right? And that could be putting on your favorite walk-up song and jamming out. That could be like throwing a little dance party. That could be like, to start off with, I don't know, going to get a coffee from your favorite coffee shop. But what that's going to do is reinforce the good behavior. It could even just be like, I don't know how David has the program set up, but maybe sending him a message or posting in a group chat, hey guys, did my mobility, right? Because subconsciously, the way the brain works is by you celebrating that, by telling a friend or patting yourself on the back, it's going to reinforce like, oh, this is a good behavior. I should do this again. And that's going to make it easier to show up, to keep doing it.
Yeah. We have the wins channel, similar to how Matt had it.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Cool. So I would highly recommend if you guys are struggling, that's part of it. Every time you do it, throw it in the wins channel. And it's going to feel good, right? There's going to be like hormones that are released like, oh man, that feels good. I did what I was supposed to do. Okay. So yeah, let's look at in the chat, just remembering, I sometimes wake up in the morning and think, shoot, I forgot to do my mobility. Do some of my homework, but not all, making time to do it all or remember all the movements. Cool. Awesome. Perfect. So we're gonna talk into scheduling next. Before I move on though, do you guys have any questions about these tiny habits? No, we're good. So kind of the first thing I would say is think about if you guys are struggling to forget, or maybe you woke up and didn't have time to do it. One, let's think about when can we schedule this, right? So that's part of the tiny habit, right? And think about something that you do every single day. And again, starting small. So if you brush your teeth every single day, right? Well, that's 2 minutes that, you could be stretching, or you could be doing, at least one of the exercises that David has you doing, think about your morning routine, right? What is your morning routine? Is it drinking coffee? Is it, going, if you have a pet, taking your dog for a walk, whatever it is, like, let's attach it to something there. And then we'll talk a little bit about scheduling.
So here's a question.
Yeah.
So how do we balance tiny habits with goals? So often most of the people go to the gym, we all work out, and we come with the goal of a weight, doing a weight or doing something better. But I'm guessing most of our goals don't create to be tiny habits, because they're more like big habits kind of thing. So how do you balance doing a tiny habit with a goal without trying to get ahead of yourself?
Yeah.
Trying to do it properly. I mean, that's hard.
Yeah, that's a great question. You're absolutely right. Tiny habits are not going to be the same as goals, right? It's really, this is, and one thing I talk a lot about with goals is goals are really like who you need to become, right? It's not just things that you do. And the tiny habits are supporting you and becoming the type of person who achieves that goal. So do you have a specific example? What's a goal of yours? Just so I could help kind of break that down.
Oh, I have thousands of goals. I'm one of these people who's, OTT, so it's easy.
Okay. What about specific to maybe
easy.
fitness?
I like to do a perfect squat below parallel, 225 for set of 6, where
Awesome.
David doesn't look at me. I don't go down in my squat and go, is my hips going to feel sore? Is my hip, So David always laughs at me and goes, you go too slow. Because I'm always thinking, how's it feel going down? Am I going deep enough? So for me, it's not only going down, but can I go down the right speed and come back out, having the confidence that it all moves in the right way? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or another one would be catching a clean in the bottom of a squat when you know the weight's light, but you still don't catch the clean in the bottom of your squat. You can actually halfway up. Just the excitement of catching the bottom of the squat, I think would be cool as shit. Personally.
I love it. Absolutely. That's a fantastic goal, because you're right. It is cool as shit when that happens. Okay. So that's a great goal. Now we think about, okay, what do you need to do to get there? Right. And it sounds like mobility is holding you back a little bit. Is that something you've
mobility and confidence? Yeah. So
yeah. Mobility.
To me, it's when if you have a bit better mobility, believe you can apply it constantly. I don't know,
yeah, absolutely. So I imagine that's why you're here, right? That's why you're in this course, right?
Correct.
David is, he's giving you the how, you just have to follow through. So the tiny habits is really about doing, what he's given you. Okay. So the tiny habits are not necessarily the goal itself, but if it's 3 days a week, mobility 3 days a week, right? That would be the tiny habit, because if you keep doing that on a consistent basis, you will hit the goal, right? That's kind of the process. So when it comes to the tiny habit, that's really like the starting point, right? David is giving you guys like more specifics and like a detailed program. But for some people who have never worked out, the tiny habit is just going to the gym, right? Where it's just like, that's the hardest part. So for some clients, I tell them like, literally, you're heading home from work. All you have to do is show up at the gym. If you get there, you walk inside and you're like, I really don't want to work out today, you can head home. But 9 times out of 10, by just getting to the gym, they're going to work out. Okay. So I would say for you guys, it's, if you're struggling with being consistent, like do 1 minute, commit to 1 minute of David's program, right? If he has a 10-minute session or 15 minutes, or, maybe there's multiple throughout the day, and you're like, cause I understand, right? We all have priorities. Life happens. It ebbs and flows between being busy, having crazy schedules, things come up, but we always have time for like 1 minute, right? Or 2 minutes. So that's really the tiny habit, is like, sometimes I'll do that for myself, for productivity, is I'm like, man, I have all this work to do today. I'm overwhelmed. I'm anxious. Like, I really don't want to do it. It's like, okay, set a timer for 5 minutes. If you just work for 5 minutes, then you can stop after that. We'll get back onto it the next day. And a lot of times I end up working for an hour, because getting started is the hardest part. And that's the goal of the tiny habit. So part of what I'm doing is helping you guys unlearn how you think about this. And that's why I mentioned the all or nothing approach, because I know exactly where you're at. Sometimes it can just be daunting of like, oh man, I missed my mobility routine, whether it's too late or you're like, I have all these priorities. It's like, okay, well, something is better than nothing. So like, let's do one piece of mobility. 1 minute would be better. That way you got it in today rather than skipping it. So It's kind of a longer winded answer. Does that kind of make sense how the tiny habits fit in?
Sure, that's for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. And then, so yeah, just reading through some of what you guys said, do some of the homework, not all, competing priorities, and then committed for the first couple of weeks, like nothing will mess up my mobility time. Awesome. Yeah. So this is another thing with tiny habits, right? Is we want to make it as easy as possible. And then next, what I'm going to talk about is scheduling. So this is how you guys can actually prioritize this, but there's a graph out there. You guys could Google tiny habit. But essentially it is, the harder something is to do, the more motivation we need, right? The easier something is to do, the less motivation we need. So we want to try and find something that is low motivation and easy to do. Okay. So an example I'll give you is, if we wake up in the morning, first thing, it would be hard to get out of bed and go for a walk or meditate or journal, right? Because it's like, oh, I'm tired. I have to get out of bed. I have to go do this. The easy thing, right? And secondly, that would take more motivation, right? It's higher motivation to be like, okay, I said I was going to get up at 6. I'm getting up at 6. So it's high motivation. We have to be really motivated, and it's harder to do. Okay. Now, what's easy to do is just grab your phone and scroll on social media or scroll through your email. That's very easy to do. And it's low motivation. It doesn't take much. All I have to do is grab my phone, right? That's why most of us would fall into that. So what we want to do is we want to try and with these tiny habits is, make something easy to do that doesn't take a lot of motivation. So that's why we're taking out the daunting task of like, okay, I've got to go to the gym for 2 hours, 5 times a week. It's like, no, I just have to show up at the gym, right? It's not hard to do that. I could just get in my car or walk or whatever. And then all I have to do is show up. Or the examples I gave of reading, right? It's high motivation. It's hard to read 30 minutes every day with everything we've got going on, but it's easy to read one sentence. So it's really about building the habit. And so like, Robbie, you had mentioned that you're doing really good for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden you lose that motivation. And that's because it's the conversation of motivation versus discipline. And that's why it's so important to build a habit, because these tiny habits, like the way I want you guys to think about it is, if you're struggling staying consistent with David's program, it's like, all right, let's commit for the next 7 days. I'm going to do at least 1 minute every single day of his program, because the goal is more about it being a part of your routine. And then after 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, now there was no motivation. It's just a part of your life, right? The same way that brushing your teeth is a part of your life. The same way that, we have, like, if you've ever driven, the same way every day to work, and then all of a sudden it's a weekend and you find yourself, you actually took a right and you headed to work because your mind is so used to going that way. It's the same kind of thing. So we're trying to build a habit so that on those days when we're not motivated, we can stay disciplined. Okay. So that's really the goal, is like keeping it super simple, because you're right. Motivation is going to be fleeting. And this is why you see with New Year's resolutions, or people, start a new diet or workout plan, they're super gung ho and then they fall off because they're only relying on the motivation. And by utilizing this tiny habit, that's going to help you, and it's really individualized. So I gave you guys a lot of examples, but really think about what fits with you, what fits in your schedule. For me, I remember I wanted to start reading more. I can't read at night because I'm too exhausted. And so I drink coffee every morning. I'm obsessed with coffee. So I made a deal with myself. You're not allowed to be drinking coffee unless you're reading. And then now, fast forward a couple years later, and it's most of the time I'll read first thing in the morning because it's just part of that routine. I don't have to think about it. Okay. So that's where the tiny habits come into play. So moving on, we're going to talk about scheduling. Okay. How many people schedule out their week? And you can throw that in the chat or you can raise your hand. I'm curious how many people are scheduling. And the reason I ask is I found that most people are not scheduling, right? So when it comes to either forgetting to do the program or shifting priorities, right? Because life's always going to come up. I recommend scheduling. And at first, what I'm going to talk about, it might feel a little constrictive, but I want you to understand there's this idea that discipline equals freedom. So what I would recommend is you're going to put on your calendar, book yourself to book yourself. So 1 hour and it won't take a full hour. It shouldn't, at least. And the more you do it, it might take 5 minutes, might take 10 minutes, but you're going to plan out your entire week, right? So if we're thinking about next week, maybe it's on Sunday, 5 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, you get up, you pull up your calendar and you look at your entire week, right? So that is meetings, that is work. So the first thing that I want you to plug in, and this is going to be counterintuitive to what most people think, is things that fill your cup, things that are, important to you, free time, or things like this, extracurriculars, your course, working out, right? Now, obviously work, maybe you can't push that around. So if you work an 8 to 5, you can just block that off. Okay. From 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'm at work Monday through Friday. Cool. That time is not mine. I can't do anything about it. Right. But then we're going to start blocking in okay, well, if I'm at 8, well, let's say that, if I work backwards, right? So let's say it's Monday. Okay. I wake up at 6 a.m. I drink coffee, I eat breakfast, and then I'm out the door at 7 to go to work. And then you tell me that doing mobility, the best time is to do it first thing in the morning. It's okay, well, now I'm going to wake up at 5:45. And if I wake up at 5:45, I can drink coffee, do my mobility, eat breakfast, and then all of a sudden it's scheduled, right? Or in the evening, where's your gym time? That's the first step, is literally on your calendar. I would say after this call, first thing you do, go add on your calendar, and I just call it book yourself to book yourself, or you could call it schedule your week. And I want you to plan out your entire week, right? For me, I work for myself, I work remotely. So I'll actually block off any calls that I have, Zoom calls like this. I'll put that on the calendar. I'll put my workout time on the calendar. That way it's there. And then when I look at my day, I'm okay, these are all the things that I have to happen, but at 10 a.m. I'm working out. That's my time. That way my priorities are there, right? That way you can make sure that it's in. So that would be the first step. If you feel like you're forgetting about doing it, rather than all of a sudden it gets to be 7 o'clock at night and you're oh, I didn't do my mobility, shoot, and I don't have time. You're going to a dinner with friends, et cetera, et cetera. So I would plan that out, right? David, how many days a week do you have them doing stuff right now?
So we do 2 group classes all together live.
Okay.
And then we all have a one-on-one with me as well.
Awesome.
And then I've given them homework. So I give the whole group something to do. So it started off with a 2-minute squat every day. And then I've added in some other things where we alternate between squat, couch stretch, seated cross shin. And then I've also given them some individualized mobility stuff to do based on our one-on-one sessions. I normally program it, so it depends on the person, but probably 20 minutes, and it might be do half of it one day and then half another day, something along those lines.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So for example, right, you guys have these group calls, put that on the calendar. Your one-on-one call, put that on the calendar. And then where it gets individualized is look at the work that David's given you, either as the group stuff, or if it's individualized, and then plan out your week. Plan, when are you going to do it? How long is it going to take you? Do you need extra time? And that's where it could be in the morning, or you could break it up, right? It could be in the morning, could be an afternoon, but that way it's on the calendar. And then I would set reminders, right? I would set calendar reminders so that a notification pops up on your phone, right? Oh, okay, I have this to do now. I have this to do now. And then what I do, so that's the full week, is I revisit the night before. So for tomorrow, when I get off this call, this will be the last thing I have today. I'll take a look at my calendar. What do I have tomorrow? Okay, when can I do these things? Do I need to move anything around? Because again, I understand your schedules change, priorities shift, and it's okay, do you need to move it to another day? And then at least that way it's on that day, or just a different time that day. But that's going to be the first step, is actually scheduling this, actually putting it on the calendar, just as if you had a doctor's appointment or a meeting with a client or whatever it is, right? And then, as far as, training your attention, right? Because I know sometimes mobility cannot be the most fun thing, right? We can all admit that. However, you guys have goals, right? And so it's like, this is necessary to get to your goal. So, one thing I found is it's this idea of blocking and batching, which is, again, something you guys could use in your professional life. And it's talking about this productivity, right? Rather than just being busy. I think most of the world today is busy. They're not actually productive, right? So it's like you were at work for 8 hours, cool, but what did you actually accomplish? And the way we do that is by, pairing like items. So for example, what I would recommend is if you're checking email throughout the day, right? And instead of checking it, every hour, let's say, first thing in the morning, I'm going to check it. I'm going to respond to all my emails. Then middle of the day, then maybe once again, right? Because every time you switch in and out of an activity, you lose focus, right? It can take 15 to 30 minutes to get your attention back into the next item, right? So I used to do this a lot, right? I'm also a fitness coach. I run my own business. I do a lot of social media for marketing. So it might be like, oh, I'm going to write an email, then I'm going to program for a client. Then I'm going to, post on social media. Then I'm going to, hop on a call, and then I'll program for another client. And I thought I was keeping myself fresh, bouncing around. But actually what's more productive is blocking off an hour and only programming for clients for that hour, or only, working on marketing, or only, responding to emails. And so the reason I bring all that up is your attention can actually be trained. So this ties into the tiny habits. So if you feel like you're struggling, where you're like, man, after 10 minutes, I just kind of zone out and I'm not really like paying attention to what I'm doing and I get bored. Well, cool. Then maybe break up what David has for you into 5-minute increments, right? 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at night, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. And then what you'll find is the more you do it, the longer you can go, right? So we can go from 5 minutes to 10 minutes, et cetera. And then secondly, what will really help with productivity is your environment. So I would try to find a place where you do mobility. That's the only place you do mobility, right? Maybe, obviously at the gym. I don't know if I know this happened when COVID really hit, all the gyms closed here. I'm in Colorado, and luckily I had a garage. So I had a gym there. And it's funny because, I found that it's so much easier to go to the gym because that environment, like my brain is like, oh, this is the gym. I work out here. Like it's just conditioned that way. And what I found was when I walked to my garage and I was just inside, like working on my computer, I was less motivated to work out. It was much harder. And there's a lot of research too that talks about this, like with college students, because they live in a dorm and they sleep where they cook dinner, where they study, where they hang out with friends. And there's no separation, right? But we need to have separation. So I would recommend for you guys is, maybe it's not that you go to the gym, but having a specific room where if it's your garage, or maybe you have a spot in your house that has great lighting in the morning, it's like, let's do mobility there where we're not as distracted, right? Because that's going to help every time, it's that routine. When we go to that room, our brain is going to be conditioned like, oh, this is where I do mobility. And then we can stay focused, and then we can have our attention, right? And again, it's just tying in those tiny habits. And then kind of the third piece is what works for you. Like learn about yourself, right? So I know I've mentioned a lot in this example of first thing in the morning, but if you are not a morning person and you're one of these people that are just like, man, I hate mornings, I can't do anything in the morning, then cool, let's do it at night, right? Or maybe you have a flexible job where you could do it in the middle of the day. That would be a great way to break apart your workday. If you work from home, or you have flexibility where it's like, cool, I can take, during my lunch, I'm going to work on some of these mobility exercises, but finding what time of day works best for you, not what time of day do you think, oh, like everyone I know works out in the morning, I should work out in the morning. Like if that doesn't work for you, then you're not going to be motivated. It's again, going back to that graph, it's like, that's a really hard thing to do, and you got to be highly motivated. So all of this is tying into the tiny habits. Basically, we want to make it as easy as possible just to get started. So that being said, I'll kind of pause for a minute. I know I talked a lot, to see if anybody has any questions or thoughts regarding scheduling, tiny habits, that sort of stuff.
I was thinking maybe if we could circle back to, I mean, I know you did mention it already, but that starting off well and then things kind of like tapering off
Yeah.
and like kind of momentum and kind of like recognizing when that's starting to happen and how people can kind of like once they notice it, try to pick it back up again.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, guys, momentum is huge, right? And first and foremost, this ties back to, this is why I brought up the growth mindset, right? Mindset is everything. And the first step is just giving yourself grace that, hey, okay, I fell off. It's gonna happen, right? David and I are both coaches. David, have you ever, fallen off?
Yeah, so during the PTBA, there was moments where I was struggling, as you can remember. Yeah, happens to me often, and yeah, I'm definitely working on being kinder to myself.
Yeah,
not being so self-critical, and also like what you said in the past is the first step is just recognition. So it's like,
yeah.
okay, yeah, I am scrolling on my phone, and even just recognizing it is a win, and then you can go from there. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I only bring that up to say that we're all human, right? It's going to happen to all of us, but the difference between people who are successful, people who reach their goals, and then people who don't are, what do you do when that happens, right? So I would say if you've had momentum and you're now, you've been going through this program and you're like, man, I've fallen off. Like, awareness is a superpower. So the first step is, let's create awareness. Okay, now this is where we're at. Cool. What do I need to do to get back on track? And again, it's just starting small, right? It's not saying, okay, now I have to do everything, or, I have this, I do remote coaching, and I do programming for clients. And I have so many clients who, they'll miss like 2 workouts in a week. Let's say they have 4 workouts every week. They miss 2 workouts because they go out of town. Well, the next week they want to make those up and then do the next 4 workouts. And I'm like, no. Don't worry about it. You missed 2 days. No big deal. Let's just do the 4 workouts this week, right? So that's one thing. Don't feel like you have to make up for lost time, right? It's like, let's just get back on the wagon. Let's just, right, again, using the examples, let's just show up back at the gym. Let's just, stretch for 1 minute, do 1 mobility exercise. Like, let's just sit in a squat. So that's one thing. And then secondly, that I haven't really talked about is, I would say, let's track these things, right? And that way you can kind of see your wins. So again, utilizing that win channel and utilizing the community, so you have that and you have David, and I would just say, hey guys, I would reach out to people, close friends or people in this group, like, hey, I'm struggling. I haven't been doing this, it could be finding accountability partners, so that's super helpful, where if you have someone at home or a good friend or someone you live with saying, hey, like, I've really been struggling. Like, would you do this with me? Would you, sit in a squat with me for 2 minutes, twice a week or whatever it is. But then tracking, because I think sometimes if we're not actually putting eyes on what's happening, then that's where all of a sudden a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks goes by. And then we're like, oh man, I haven't been doing this, So one, it's putting it on your schedule. Then when it's on your schedule, every time you see it, it's top of mind. Oh, what do I need to do? I need to do this. And then it could be a couple of things, right? You could get a printed out calendar. You could just get a notepad and, just give yourself a check mark, right? You could put every day of the week and you could just create lines, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then put a check mark every time you do it. And that way you can kind of see, like, put it somewhere that, at your desk, or hang it somewhere at home. Or if you have like, we have a little whiteboard on our fridge in my apartment, and it could just be, something like that, so that it's like you can drop it in the bucket. That way, like, it's a reminder, and that's another way to celebrate that win. But I think that's where it starts a lot of times, is we just, it's like, okay, today was busy, okay, tomorrow is busy, and then all of a sudden 3 weeks go by and we're like, wow, I haven't done anything. So it's having some sort of tracking system of like, And then reviewing it, where maybe once a week you're like, okay, how did this week go? Oh man, I got 2 out of 4, sessions in. Okay, I'm going to do better next week. But ultimately, like, messy action, I call it speed of implementation. It's like, do something, do anything to get back started. If it's literally, if you're on this call, like drop in a squat right now if you haven't been doing your mobility, and just sit for 30 seconds, for a minute, while you're listening to me talk, right? That's really what it is. And then we just will build on that momentum. So it's start so small that it feels too easy. Awesome. So that's kind of the gist of the habits, the scheduling. But I'm more than happy. Are there any other questions related to what I've talked about, or anything else? Could be fitness, could be life, could be mindset, goals. Like, I tend to wear a lot of hats, so I'm here for you guys, here to help support. Let me know. You can throw it in the chat, or you can just start speaking.
How do you do your goals then? Do you set lots of small goals so you give yourself on a pat regularly, because let's do weightlifting, 2-pound jump, for instance, or it's 2 pounds down? Or do you set yourself bigger goals which push you more? Or do bigger goals become too self-critical? I don't know. So is it better to have smaller goals, whatever it might be, 2 pounds, better squat, whatever it might be, or is it better to have something to really push towards?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say yes. So the answer is both. And the simple way that I would say set goals is, it kind of depends what we're talking about, but I really, really believe in planning long-term. And the first thing I'll say about goals is understand that goals can change, right, throughout our lifetime. So just because you set a goal 5 years ago, your circumstances might change, your priorities might change. You may no longer want that goal, and that's okay. But typically with a lot of my clients, it'll be like 10-year, 5-year, 3-year, 1 year, right? Fitness is a little different, where we typically won't go out that far of like a 10-year goal. But let's say that we wanted to hit like a lifetime, PR on a squat, right? And we have that number, and maybe that's like 2 or 3 years out. I would say, okay, that's a 3-year goal. And, let's just say, David, you use pounds or kilos? What do you?
Pounds.
Pounds. Okay, perfect. I love it. So let's say you want to have a 400-pound back squat, right? That's a 3-year goal. Okay. Well, before you can have a 400-pound back squat, maybe it's, in 2 years, you need to have a 350-pound back squat. And then in 1 year, it's like, you want to have a, 330-pound back squat, so we work backwards, right? 400 is the big goal. But maybe what's really holding you back is mobility, right? So I would say if we have a 1-year goal, that's like a big goal. Then we do what I call quarterly habits, but you could also think about these as quarterly goals. So you would break it down like to a mini goal within the quarter, right? So let's say that, you wanted to add, 20 pounds to your squat by the end of the year. Well, that's the end of the year goal. And then maybe 3 years from now, you want to add 100 pounds or whatever it is. Well, the quarterly habit might be, I'll break it down even further, actually. Let's say there's 4 quarters in a year, right? Well, you haven't been working out. So the first quarterly habit might be just join a gym. And that's a mini goal. That's the first quarter of the year. The second quarterly habit might be, okay, I'm going to hire a coach because I can't really do this on my own. So that's what you're going to do the next quarter, is find a coach. Then you realize, okay, mobility is the big limiter. I need help with mobility. Then maybe you do a program like David's, and you're consistent, and then you build off that. So does that kind of make sense? Where, like, I always say we need a long-term goal, but ultimately then we have benchmarks along the way. And that really just creates the plan for, okay, how do I get there?
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then from there too, like, you have the quarterly habit, and then that's where I would say it's like the tiny habits is really the smallest step, right? So maybe in that example, I said, for the quarter that I said was, join a gym, right? It's like the tiny habit could just be like driving to the gym. You know what I mean? That sort of thing. So, and again, this can apply to any aspect of life, not just fitness. Awesome. That was a really good question. Anybody else? I'm here. There's no dumb questions. I know you got them. We all got questions. Anything and everything. Nothing's off limits.
I'll ask another question because I can't help myself.
Let's
I know
go.
these guys aren't shy normally because I work out with them regularly. So if you think about your schedule, and we all are here because basically our mobility needs to be better for what we want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
How do we balance the mobility work with going to the gym work? Because as I talk to some of the people on the call, I'm sore from mobility, right? So if I go to David for a session, I'm sore from David, no question. I'm sore from the training, the homework he gives us, no question, right? But then of course, when we go to work out, I'm already sore from mobility. I work out, I'm more sore. And it's hard to improve when you're constantly sore. So in some ways, as I'm going to go back to the tiny habit comment now, use your own words. What comes first? Everyone here is thinking of mobility, but everyone is sore when you get the workout to do from the mobility. Does that mean then as a result, we should think about working out less? Does that mean we should be working out half as much and doing more mobility? Because at some point, something has to give to ingrain those good habits.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me ask you a little more individual question, if you don't mind answering. How consistent do you feel like you've been throughout this program?
I do homework most days. I don't do all my homework. I'm very honest. Okay. I do my sitting down, which I'm doing now, which I've already done. I do the bottom of the squat every day. I do my shoulder cars and my neck cars. The rest of the cars might not happen. But everything else I do pretty consistently. And my habit is I do the bottom squat before every workout I do. No matter what the workout is, I do it then because I can hold onto a pole. That's my habit. Everything else gets fitted in somewhere else in the day. But I am sore my hips every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I could not give birth because I am constantly sore my hips. And so, at some point it's like, people, I tell you, tease David, you wear those whip things and they tell you how much you recovered. Well, if I wore one of those, I don't think I'd ever recover properly. If I wouldn't work out. So I always wonder how much of us are really adversely affecting ourselves because we're not working out smartly, or we're not doing the right things to get us to our goals.
It's a great question. So I've got a couple of thoughts, and then I'm also going to turn it over. I'm going to ask David some questions because he knows you better, right? He's your coach. So ultimately, I would say it depends, right? What are your goals, and then where are you at? So speaking in generalities, because I am a fitness coach, some people, I've had clients who it's like, maybe we do need to work out less and we do need to prioritize the mobility, right? There's a give and take. And eventually then we'll be, because here's the thing about mobility is like when you lose it, it takes a really long time to get it back. But what you guys are going to notice is eventually you're going to be like, oh, I have a certain range of motion and I'm able to maintain that. And instead of having to do these cars, 5 times a week, maybe it's only 3 times, etc. But until you get to that point, you may have to do more, right? Secondly, I would say consistency is huge. And just like with the mobility stuff, it's just like the first time you worked out. And, I've coached a lot of CrossFit, and anytime people come and do CrossFit, the first 2 to 3 months, they're really, really sore. And then eventually your body adapts. So I would say your body will adapt. And that's partly why the consistency is so important. So it's continuing to do that. And if you're really, really sore, I would say it kind of depends, right? It's twofold. And that's why I'm gonna turn it over to David in a minute, because I don't know for you specifically. Maybe you should cut back on working out. Maybe you don't need to, but there will be a point regardless that your body acclimates to it, which is why it's so important to keep doing the work. Eventually your body will acclimate. You will not be as sore, and then you'll be able to do both. But I'll let David kind of talk whether, depending, like for you specifically, where you're at now, should you maybe cut back in one area or not?
Yeah, so I think I can talk to Brad a bit more about this in our one-on-one, but just to also sort of address the group at the same time. Like I said in one of the videos in the program, mobility is definitely sort of foundational. So if your goal is to do snatches, do muscle ups, do handstands, and all you're doing is the WOD every day, but your shoulder can't move past this position here. No matter how many WODs you do, you're never going to be able to do those movements because your body just isn't there. So that's when you have to, that would be a situation where a person needs to cut down somewhat on how much they're working out and spend more time on the mobility. And the other great thing about mobility, though, is the more mobility you have, the more work capacity you actually have, because your joints have more options. They have more range of motion, and you have more tissues sort of surrounding your joints. So it's actually going to make you more durable, and it's going to lower your risk of injury. And yeah, like Taylor was saying, if you don't have the mobility required for what you want to do with your body, then you're going to have to put in you're going to have to put in extra work to get to that point. Once you have it, it's a lot easier to maintain it. So yeah, I hope that helps with you guys. And Brad, I think, like, you know yourself, like you've been seeing so much progress. So I think keep doing what you're doing. Yeah, I think sometimes you maybe do a couple too many WODs during the week, but I know we all love to do the WODs and train with our friends. So then even sometimes maybe it might just be a matter of scaling the workout a little bit more. So you have that little bit more fuel in the tank for the other stuff that you need to do. So yeah, anyways, hope that was helpful, guys.
Thank you. It was.
Awesome. Yeah. Ultimately, this is, it's kind of like the conversation of, you guys are talking about priorities, other things coming up. So I would say, look at these things from a 10,000 foot view, because I know where you're at. Like, we all want to do the fun stuff, the sexy stuff. We want to lift the barbells. We want to do high skill gymnastics, right? We want to do the stuff that like leaves us sweating on our back because we feel good after. So in the moment, I know like where you're at right now, you're all doing this mobility because of an end goal. And it may feel like you're not making progress in terms of fitness, or it may feel like you're taking a step back, but it's one of those things where if this is the biggest priority, it may feel like 2 steps back, but as soon as there will be a flip that's switched, and then it'll be like 3 steps forward. So it's kind of just asking yourself individually, like, okay, what's most important right now? And as hard as it could be, if you're not 100% consistent with the mobility, you're here for a reason. So I would say, hone in on that, get really, really good at that. If push comes to shove, if you can only make a choice about a workout or mobility, because it's ultimately going to lead you into being able to do more workouts. Awesome. Well, any final questions? We'll take one more. I want to be mindful of your guys' time. Yes, no, maybe.
I think I saw Melvin unmute himself before Brad asked the last question. I don't know if you had something, Melvin.
Well, I guess I do have a question. It's all been extremely helpful. Even I would say the tidbits, in the sense of the small pieces, putting them together. Ironically, I was trying to figure out a way to increase my reading capacity. So that was actually a good tip there. But I just had just in the sense of managing, I don't want to say disappointment, but in that sense of not hitting every day and kind of getting frustrated with the inconsistencies of life, I guess, when we look at this, is how to better manage that. Because I think you make a valid point. We're still doing it, and it's hard to obviously see the impact on a day-to-day basis per se. But if we're doing it to a degree, and of course, there's going to be times where we're not doing it 7 days a week. But how do we avoid the pitfalls of, the negativity, I guess, in that sense of, well, I missed a day, or I didn't do 2 days, or whatever it may be. How do we better manage that aspect of it? Because I think for myself, that definitely does happen where I get it in. But then there's some days, of course, I definitely forget or life happens.
Awesome, Melvin. That is such a good question. We've all been there, and again, myself included. It's funny because I teach this stuff and I still struggle. I still can't get everything in. My biggest piece of advice would be feel the emotions, but then put a time constraint on it. So it's interesting, a lot of people who follow me or I work with, like, I'm known as a positive guy, the positivity guy, because I believe we always, again, going back to the growth mindset, like, oh, cool, like, what opportunity is presenting itself, right? This didn't work out as I planned. Okay, what can I learn from that? Like, that's the mindset I want you to have. So if you can't get it in, okay, I didn't get it in. Why didn't I? Oh, I didn't really schedule out my week. And last week I scheduled out my week and it went great. Okay, that's what happened. But what most people miss is they just, they're so positive, they mask what they're actually feeling. So I'm here to tell you, it's okay to be frustrated or upset, right? Because you care and you want it to happen. So I would say, like, rather than beating yourself up, letting it, continue into the night, the next day, the next week, it's okay to be frustrated. So, be frustrated for 5 minutes, be frustrated for 10 minutes, whatever that looks like for you. And then whenever that timer's done, okay, now how can I make tomorrow better? And I think that's a good way where you can actually allow yourself to feel that. And if you're looking for, like, some really good actionable items, like, I'm a huge fan of journaling. We could go off on a whole other, side tangent. I journal every morning, and I know I'm not trying to add a lot more to your plate, but that's a good way to just kind of process that or tell someone, or again, I would utilize this group. If you have a wins channel, I imagine there's another channel, and be like, and just be like, hey guys, really frustrated. Just wanted to share how I'm feeling with you guys. I'm looking forward to tomorrow being a great day. So kind of to summarize that, it's like, it's okay to be frustrated, but set a timer. So that way, once that timer's up, okay, now we can focus on the future, because ultimately it happened. We missed it. There's nothing you can do. You can't go back in time. So rather than dwell on it and let it impact you in the future, let's just move forward.
Appreciate that. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, great. David, anything else you wanted me to touch on tonight?
No, that was awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate that. And, yeah,
absolutely.
That's it for me.
Well, awesome, guys. Thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on here. Thanks for making this a priority. I hope this helps. If you guys have any more questions, I know this Tiny Habits can be a new thing. Probably where you could reach out to me the most. I'm on Instagram. I could have David, if maybe you want to just throw my handle in Slack or wherever, but it's at Taylor_Sleaford, SLEAFORD. You guys can send me a message. I'm more than happy to help. If you got any more questions, or in a week you're like, oh, you said this, ask me about that. But my last piece of advice is, just start smaller than you need to. Tiny wins, little by little, a little becomes a lot. So that's all I got for you.
Thank you very much.